everyone! Are you looking at my little friend? Yeah, she's pretty cool. And if you took her and another snake with the exact same genes, you could get an all-white snake. That's crazy, right? Yeah, genetics are really cool. I have a question for you guys today. And yes, it has to do with genetics. Why do people with blonde hair usually have blue eyes? Well, the answer is genetic linkage. Let me explain this to you. But first, we need some background. To begin, we are going to talk about a very famous geneticist. In 1866, the first major breakthrough in genetics was made when Gregor Mendel, experimenting with pea plants, discovered that pea plant traits were inherited from the parent plants in predictable ways. From his experimentation, he created the first theories and laws about genetics. For us, the most important one is the law of independent assortment. This law states that all genes assort independently from one another, meaning that all traits have an equal opportunity of occurring together. Next, let's talk a little bit about chromosomes, the carriers of our genetic material. As you may know, we all have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and we get half of our chromosomes from our mom and half from our dad. You might think that we would get an identical copy of one of our parents' 2 chromosomes from each parent, but this is not true. What really happens is that before getting split up into a reproductive cell, the chromosome pairs swap genes. This happens in each parent and for each of the 23 pairs of chromosomes. So any one chromosome that we get from one parent is actually a mix of that one parent's 2 chromosomes of that type. How does this happen though? The answer is through meiosis. Meiosis starts in one parent with one pair of that parent's 23 chromosomes. The genes in a chromosome pair are homologous to each other, meaning that they have the same genes at the same locations. The meiosis process sees these chromosomes combined and then split through a process of duplication, segregation, recombination or crossing over, and finally cell division, ending with a product of 4 gametes. Gametes are reproductive cells that only have one chromosome instead of the pair, and they contain the chromosome that is a mix of one parent's chromosome pair. Crossing over or recombination, which is particularly important to genetic linkage, occurs during this process of meiosis. Crossing over is what we have been calling the mixing up of genes, and in scientific terms, it is the exchange of genes between homologous chromosomes, resulting in a mixture of characteristics in offspring. Now that we know some background, let's talk about our problem with Mendel's law and how genetic linkage works. Mendel's law of independent assortment tells us that all genes assort independently, as shown here with genes G and W. According to Mendel, we get these 4 gametes in equal proportions. However, through observation and data collection, we know that this isn't always true. Often the gamete types that the parents had will show up more often than the new gamete types. This is an example of genetic linkage, but how does this happen? Well, it starts with the fact that organisms have a lot more genes than chromosomes. In fact, humans have about 19,000 genes on 23 chromosome pairs. So this means that there are many genes on each chromosome, and many are packed really close together. In inheritance, it happens that the genes that are close together on one chromosome tend to be inherited as a pair. This is what genetic linkage is. So, when does independent assortment actually work? When genes are on separate chromosomes or very far apart, it is true that they assort independently, as Mendel said. When they are on different chromosomes, they assort independently because of the random orientation of homologous chromosome pairs during meiosis. This gives each of the gamete types a 25% chance of being created. When genes are on the same chromosome but very far apart, they assort independently due to crossing over. This once again gives each of the gamete types a 25% chance of being created. On the other hand, when genes are very close together on the same chromosome, crossing over still happens, however the outcome of the gamete types produced is different. Instead of a 25% chance for each type, we get a greater percentage for 2 of the gamete types and a smaller percentage for the other 2. This is because the crossover will rarely happen in between 2 closely spaced genes. We say the common types of gametes have parental configurations, and the rare types have recombinant configurations. To conclude, Mendel's law of independent assortment doesn't always predict the outcome correctly. This is because organisms have many genes on each chromosome, so you end up with tightly spaced genes. During meiosis, 2 genes right next to each other rarely have a crossover happen right between them, leaving us with more parental chromosomes than recombinant and making the genes appear linked. Now you know, people with blonde hair usually have blue eyes because of genetic linkage. And genetic linkage is all because we have too many genes for our chromosomes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye-bye!